So what is this new rule of retirement? It has to do with knowing when enough is enough. And if we're not careful, we can work well past that point and end up sacrificing something that's enormously valuable to us. And once it's gone, it's gone. And that is, we can end up giving up the youth of our senior years, the time when we can be most active and do the things we've always dreamed of. I don't want to see that happen to you, which is why I'm sharing this rule with you, which is you have enough money to retire when you have the funds, when you have the assets to live the lifestyle that you've become accustomed to or the lifestyle that you're comfortable with. And at that point, it's okay to keep working, but just know that you're working for something outside of money. You might be working for purpose. You might be working just to have something. You enjoy working. You enjoy a group of people at work. They're your friends. You enjoy being part of a team. But don't unnecessarily give up that youth of your senior years once you get to the point where financially you can live the lifestyle that you want or a lifestyle that you know you're going to be comfortable in. Now, that's a very general statement. This is not financial advice. Some of us have goals outside of our retirement. We have kids that we want to support. We have causes that we want to support. And that is fine. And congratulations on meeting that first milestone, which is you are now financially independent. You don't need to work to fund your lifestyle. You're working for other goals that are important in your life. But it's important to be clear that that's what you're doing, right? Maybe you have an adult child that needs extra assistance, and so you're working to build up that fund. Or there's a not-for-profit that you're passionate about, and you want to help that cause, and that's why you continue to work. But know that the clock is ticking. And for most of us, at 60 years old, unfortunately, we have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active time in front of us. And we don't want to give that up unnecessarily. So there's the aspect of time. There's also the aspect of your health, right? As we get older, the pressures of the job, the pressures that we face, the stress at work, it makes it harder to stay healthy. We don't have the time to work out, to shop and buy healthy foods, to take care of ourselves and to prepare healthy meals. And frankly, the stress is more difficult, at least in my case, as you get older. And for many of us, it can almost be the frog in boiling water syndrome, where it doesn't feel like we're under a lot of pressure and we think we're handling it well. But I can tell you, as a financial advisor for over 20 years, oftentimes when people come back 3 months after retiring, 6 months after retiring, a year after retiring, they share this sense of, I didn't realize how much pressure that I was under. And that pressure gets harder and harder for our bodies to take. Another reason that people continue to work past the point where they can fund their lifestyle is because they're comparing. They're comparing themselves to others and maybe what somebody else has in retirement, or somebody else has a second home. And be really careful with comparison, right? We want the retirement that's important to us versus trying to impress somebody else. That game just never ends, and we're all old enough to know that. But it's easy to kind of get caught up into that spiral, right? I've got 3 rules for generating wealth. And the first one is, no matter how much that you earn, you need to spend less than what you earn, and you need to invest that money. But the second, number 2 and number 3 is I'll tell you number 2 because it relates to this, one house. And the one house rule, now this isn't, I say somewhat tongue in cheek, but I can tell you a lot of folks think, oh gee, it'd be nice to have this vacation home. And maybe it would be, and if that's important to you, it's your money. You spend it however you want. But is it worth giving up 5 or 10 years of the youth of your senior years in order to be able to do that? None of us can answer that question, but be thoughtful and deliberate about that, because as we approach our 50s, as we approach our 60s, it's a very clear trade-off of time. Many of us are exchanging our time for money, and the question is, once we get to that point where we can live this lifestyle that we want, that we've become accustomed to, once we have enough for that, then it really comes down to the trade-off. And is it worth working an extra 5 years to get that second home? For many people, the answer is yes. For many other people, the answer is no. And there is no right or wrong answer in general. It's the right answer for you. But just be thoughtful and deliberate before you enter that path. Now, I mentioned earlier, you have enough money to retire when you have the funds sufficient to fund your lifestyle in the manner that you've grown accustomed to and you'd like to maintain, whether that's your current lifestyle or maybe throttling back or maybe even increasing that lifestyle, right? But how do you know that you have the asset base to do that? You know, there's several rules of thumb that I could talk about in my videos, and I've talked about these in the past, right? You can look at how much money your investments need to support, what those expenses are, what expenses need to be funded from your investments as opposed to Social Security, as opposed to maybe if you have a rental property and you have rental income coming in, maybe you have a pension. So what are those sources of income? What are the expenses? And then the gap, what's not covered by those sources of income, is what you have to cover from your investments. And in general, there's this rule of 4% that talks about for a 30-year time period, folks that are invested 60% in large cap US stocks and 40% in intermediate government bonds. There's a gentleman by the name of William Bengen that did this. It's called the safe withdrawal rate. And in general, that's 4%. But an easier way to think about that is the inverse of 4% is 25. So if you take the expenses that your investments need to support, let's say that, just for easy math for me, it's $10,000 a year. 25 times that is $250,000. So if your investments needed to support $40,000 a year, then 25 times that's $1 million. So that's high level of how to calculate that. But you don't want to retire with a rule of thumb. You want to know, and for that, as I mentioned earlier, this is not financial advice. I think you want to work with a financial advisor that's a fiduciary to you 100% of the time. And it's also helpful to know, what do other people, what does the average American have in retirement income, to see how you compare. I don't want you comparing from a lifestyle standpoint, but I suspect many of my viewers are further along than they think, and that's what this video here talks about. Average income for Americans in retirement. Thanks for watching this video. Bye-bye.